Insurance professionals work hard every day to keep people safe. But as technology transforms the industry, how can insurers protect not only their clients, but also themselves from ever-changing cyber risks? My name's Elizabeth Blossfield, and I'm the host of the Insuring Cyber podcast, a bi-monthly look into how the world of cyber and the business of insurance are connected. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Insuring Cyber podcast. I'm so excited to introduce you to our guest for this month, James Benham. He's a tech entrepreneur, author, and CEO of JBKnowledge. James has one of those rare, inspiring stories where he started his company from his college dorm room. And through grit, vision, and a deep love for software development, he grew it into a multinational tech firm that serves the insurance and construction industries. Along the way, he's bootstrapped every step, stayed debt-free, and recently distilled that journey into his book, Be Your Own VC, which lays out principles for sustainable growth. James brings insight not only into entrepreneurship and innovation, but also into the unique tech challenges facing legacy industries like insurance. Check out what he had to say. Hi, James. It's great to be speaking with you today. How are you doing?
Having a great day. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I know you have a ton of great expertise in the tech industry, and I can't wait to get into some of the questions.
Awesome. Me too.
Well, I wanted to start off just kind of talking about your background because I know you do a ton of different things. You're very busy. And one of the things that you've done is built your company, JBKnowledge, from your college dorm room into a multinational company. So congratulations on that growth. I was just curious if you could start off kind of talking about that transition and what are some of the moments that sort of stand out from that journey?
Yeah, sure. You know, when I came to Texas A&M 28 years ago to be in the Corps of Cadets, and had the idea of being in business somehow. Didn't really know what. I'd been programming since I was about 11 years old, so I really liked computers and technology and software, and ended up getting an accounting degree and a master's in information systems management from the Mays Business School here at A&M. And I didn't really know where that was going to lead, and so I did a couple of internships with PricewaterhouseCoopers as a security auditor, was paid to break into systems and fix them. So I worked for them for a total of 6 months, and that was enough. I was like, great firm, great people, not for me, right? Like, great firm, great people, not for me. So I went back and called my dad, and I called one of my best friends from high school, Sebastian Costa, and I said, hey, let's start a business. And I was still in my dorm room at the time. And we did $5,000 in a Gateway 2000 computer, or whatever Pentium class computer I had at the time, and started writing code. Luckily, Aggies are super duper loyal to each other. And so I called a bunch of Aggie, we call them former students. They're not former Aggies. You're always an Aggie. So I called some former students, and 8 of them ended up hiring me to write code for their businesses. And we built a bunch of stuff in 2001 and 2002. And unfortunately, 9/11 happened in 01, and Sebastian was an exchange student from Argentina, so he couldn't get a work visa. So he went back to Argentina, and he started an office there for us. And so we ended up with, an office to, people all over Argentina, and now all over South America. And then we expanded to South Africa as well, about 10 years later. And kept building code. I mean, that was what we really loved doing, was building technology, building web-based applications, mobile applications eventually, once mobile applications became an actual thing. And, we stumbled into insurance 21 years ago. Again, Aggie, friend of mine, was involved in an M&A firm that bought an insurance company. And he said, hey, they need some help with software. So 2004, I went up, and turned out they needed a lot of help with software. And we built some really, really great applications for them. And through them, we met some really large national property carriers. And then through them, got some more work. And then in 2008, I stumbled through another connection of mine in Louisiana, into workers' compensation insurance, went headlong into work comp, and, built out a really great insurance practice of a couple hundred people. And then we also, about 19 years ago, stumbled into construction software and built a bidding platform that we ran from 2008 to 2006 to 2018. And we sold that company in 2018, kept all the people and pivoted them into building Terra, which is our workers' comp first, not only, but workers' comp first policy and claim software. So we ended up building a core system Just like, hey, let's build a core system. Let's get into it. What could possibly be difficult about that? And we started with claims, then we went to policy, and so now you look at our organization now, we're 270 people or so, building software, policy, and claims for workers' comp, property, health, life, and disability. We did bootstrap it all. We never raised money, never got debt other than a few $1,000 or equipment debt to buy servers and stuff in the early days. But we paid all that off within a few years, and so we've been one of those Dave Ramsey cash flow positive, debt free people, and never raised money. And so I ended up writing a book about it called Be Your Own VC, about how to bootstrap, because it's kind of a forgotten art in the technology industry. And we're still working with who we love and building what we love, and having a lot of fun doing it some days, and a lot of stress other days. And that's what we're headquartered here in beautiful College Station, Texas, home of Texas A&M University. We just fondly call it God's country because we think he lives here. And it's been a fun ride.
I love this. What a success story. And I love how, you make it sound so easy. I know, as you mentioned, you bootstrapped everything. I know there were challenges, but, I love all the risks that you took along the way, starting from when you were 11, starting with coding, that's incredible. Yep. And then, deciding to build a company out of your dorm room is a huge risk, and it paid off. And then at the end, you're like, I also just wrote a book, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
You've done so much. It's really impressive. And I know you mentioned your shift into construction and also into insurance. That was my next question. So I guess instead of asking you what motivated that, because you sort of answered that already, I'll ask, what's your favorite part about working in insurance, and what have you learned, in the past 20 years being in the industry? Yeah,
well, we stumbled into a lot of industries. We stayed in insurance, and I want to point that out. We stayed because it's first off, a massive industry. I mean, just the market size is colossal, right? There's a lot of, and there's a ton of work to do. Insurance was a prime mover in technology. They were some of the first companies to adopt technology systems. So that means they have this prime mover's disadvantage, that they have old legacy systems they're grappling with and dealing with. But they're not. Most insurance companies aren't coming from paper, or Excel spreadsheets. I mean, they use a lot of Excel, but they still have these old legacy core systems that need upgrading, maintenance, management, development. They need improvement. So that's the JBK side of things, where we come in and take over. We call it managed maintenance, where we take over maintenance and management of older systems. And we help them do upgrades. We help them do lift and shifts. We do a lot of really neat things on JBK around applications. But it's also why we built Terra, because Terra is a next generation, cloud computing platform for policy and claims for work comp first organizations. And so we decided, hey, let's build a system that's easy to manage. I guess the reason we did all that is because insurance is a lot of fun. There's a lot of technology challenges. There's a ton of value that technology can add, because it's an industry of data, right? It's really the entire industry is data. It's different than construction. I spent 12 years really deep in construction as well. Construction, they build physical objects, right? So it's a very different industry. They work 6 days a week to 7 days a week. They work 80 hours a week. It is a very different pace, and I love construction people too, for very different reasons. So, but I think insurance is just a monster challenge. There's a ton of room for improvement still. I think we're kind of still at the beginning of the return on investment cycle for the next generation of technologies, not just AI, but basic workflow management, workflow automation, still, modern system digitization, cloud computing. There's still a ton of cloud convergences that have to take place in insurance. So, it's a lot of opportunity, and it's interesting. You end up touching every industry on the planet too, which I think is really cool. That, I'm super into a whole lot of hobbies, and insurance touches all of my hobbies. I mean, all of them. And so I think that's really neat that you have this insight into something that's so critical to modern industry and economies functioning. And when it doesn't function, and we're witnessing this with hurricanes in Florida and wildfires in California, and when the insurance economy doesn't function, the economy doesn't function. And so it's it's also super important. It's nice to work on things that really matter to people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an important industry, and you're doing such important work in this industry. And I love what you said about how it touches all of your hobbies. I was reading in your bio that you play guitar, you do ballroom dance, you have all of these different hobbies. And I resonate with that too. I'm the same way. And, I've been a journalist for, over a decade, and I've covered all different industries, and I love them all. But, I stayed in insurance for the same reasons. It's fascinating. It feels important. It touches everything. So that's great. And I know you mentioned earlier your book, and I really want to talk about this because I think this is a really exciting book. It's called Be Your Own VC, and you share bootstrapping principles for other entrepreneurs from what you learned from your own journey. I was curious if you could just kind of talk about the book and how those principles that you discuss in it sort of influenced your own approach to building JB Knowledge.
Yeah, certainly my father taught me these principles from a very early age because he bootstrapped 4 companies to exits. A machine shop, a hospital equipment business, a hospital equipment service company. He had all kinds. Then, of course, the biggest company that he had built was a Teflon business. I'm sure you're familiar with what Teflon is. Teflon. I was raised on the manufacturing room floor of that company. I used to walk every Saturday, go walk the floor with them, and we'd sweep floors and look at all the machines. I mean, in this massive manufacturing facility that made industrial Teflon. It was cool. But he always was teaching bootstrapping principles because that's all he knew. He learned it the hard way. His father was not an entrepreneur, was not a business person. He was really a farmer over in Southwest Mississippi. And so my dad had to learn these the hard way. And so he would always drill these topics into me like, hey, look, you've got to learn this. You have to learn this. It's critical to controlling your destiny, to running your own business. You don't want to have to owe banks. You don't want to have to owe other people. And so my whole childhood was this way. I mean, he also had some funny phrases that, like he used to tell me, hey, only the paranoid survive. And he said that enough that it makes that it makes you like really paranoid about things. But my dad's incredible. He's still alive. He's 86. We talk every day still. And I think for me, it was important to codify what he taught me plus what I learned on my own. Right. So, I mean, I definitely took what he taught me. I took what I got as a master's in business and undergrad in business. And, then 20 years of working with hundreds of clients, building software for them. You learn a lot, and hopefully you learn a lot. If you don't, you're short-sighted to learn from everybody around you. And I had some other great mentors, and I consolidated it into kind of my top 10 principles that I really hoped to relay, not just to startup entrepreneurs, but to entrepreneurs, people that were trying to build things inside of large companies, because most of what we do is work for large insurance companies. And of course, we have a great cohort of small to medium insurance companies, whether they're carriers, TPAs, MGAs, PBMs, ancillary service providers, or I can run through the gambit of people that we built software for in insurance. These are principles that can be used internally to drive innovation and not have to go and seek fundraising from a committee internally. And so there's a really good set of principles, like, cash is king. I can't tell you how many companies I've seen that lose sight of cash. They just lose sight of the fact that it's the lifeblood of the organization. You got to have it to run, and you can have a book profit and a cash loss and you'll be out of business. And so people really kind of lose sight of that. They lose sight of the importance of having cash on hand, having a reserve, having some ammunition to make sure that you have things you have ammunition to go to battle. Because, in business, sometimes you're going to battle. You're going to battle against conditions, against the economy, against your competitors. You need some ammunition. We talk a lot about getting out and staying out of debt, because that's I've watched a lot of companies go down, either go down or make really bad decisions because of the debt payments they have to make. Right. They conduct layoffs, and this really hit home in 2007 when we endured 2008, the Great Recession. It was a very, very difficult time to be in business, and a lot of companies didn't make it. And then when COVID hit as well, this hit yet again. There's a lot of people that got caught short because they didn't have enough cash in reserve, and they weren't staying out of debt, and it all kind of pinched together at the same time. We talk a lot about focusing on building what you have to, so you can build what you want to. Talk a lot about the number one rule of business, which is to survive. All of these things, survival, debt, out of debt. They sound, again, a little bit like, man, you're planning for worst case scenario. Yes, absolutely. You're always planning for the worst case scenario, but you're hoping for the best, and you're hoping to build a machine that is a high growth, cash generating machine. All of that applies to insurance. I've had insurance companies, clients of mine, go out of business because they got pinched, on cash, on profit and loss, on losses where they had, their loss ratio ballooned because they weren't watching their pricing, right? They went to market with too low of a price and their losses overwhelmed. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen there. And so I just thought it was a really good reminder that the fortunate thing that the book's been very, very well received. I've given a lot of speeches where we talk about the principles, and, entrepreneurs and executives in the room who are executives at large companies will get the book, read it, contact me. Man, thank you. That's a phenomenal reminder of the things I have to really focus on, what really matters. And so it's not just written for people trying to start a business. It's for people that are still running it and might need a reminder of these core principles. Because, if you can really nail them down, then you can have some space, some headspace, and some financial space to go innovate, which is what, of course, I'm really interested in, right? Is building technology that can innovate. And by innovate, I mean, improve efficiency, eliminate waste, create new things in the market.
Yeah. Yeah, I love this. And it's such a great framework for entrepreneurs, executives, like you said, in any industry, including insurance. And I can see the through line, only the paranoid survive from that education from your dad, preparing for the worst case scenario, but then also hoping for the best, as you said, so that you can make space to innovate. And I know that you're a fellow podcast host as well. You host the InsurTech Geek podcast, and you often speak to other entrepreneurs and tech leaders at different conferences. So I'm curious, this kind of goes along with your last question, but anything else that you have to add about your best advice for those who are sort of just starting out on their entrepreneurial journey?
Well, if they're a new entrepreneur, one of the best things you can do, and I talk about this, is getting mentored, right? Like actually finding people to mentor you. Pick your partners very wisely, right? Like choose carefully who you partner with. I was on a call yesterday with a budding entrepreneur talking about this exact topic. Like, you'd be very careful who you pick as a partner, and find really good mentors. And for me, I had amazing guys like Don Crawford and Mike Hovel, and really amazing people, Ken Finoglio, these men who stepped into my life and brought wisdom into these key moments in the business. Skip Brechtel, who I interviewed, who's a longtime executive in insurance, has been a great mentor to me and a whole bunch of other people in insurance. If you find those mentors and you can just get a little bit of their time, you can save yourself a whole lot of pain, like a lot of pain. And so I think that's probably one of the best things is, find some people to mentor you on that journey so you can avoid having to learn it the hard way. You shouldn't have to learn everything the hard way. Although some people really, that's their default state. That's how they learn best. But I think it's really wonderful to have people to help you along the way, and then just be really careful who you pick in the very, very early days. I hit the jackpot. Like, I hit the jackpot on co-founders. I mean, I got the most amazing people to enter this journey with me 24 years ago, and they're still with me. So it's been something that's really been remarkable that we've been able to stay together this long.
Yeah, that's amazing. You really did. You were so fortunate to find those people and find them early on in your career so that you could build, that relationship over the whole course of your career. And I think you're right. In a relationship-driven industry like insurance, those relationships are so invaluable. So I think that's great advice. And you also mentioned you're the co-founder of Terra, a cloud-based claims management software. Can you talk a little bit more about the work that this platform does?
Yeah, we saw a gap in the market, and that is reasonably priced cloud-native claims and policy system that can work for a small to medium enterprise, like a SIG, a SIF, somebody down at the state level who's a monoline comp carrier. They get clobbered by some of the prices of the big core systems. But on top of that, they're having to deal with complex implementations and really complex imports, and everything gets way too complicated for the organization of their size. But then you want to be able to service some of the bigger organizations too. And so we, from scratch, clean sheet, with a completely different team than our services team. Like we went clean sheet, new people, new system, and built a ground up system for claims first, and then policy, underwriting, billing, administration. So we can quote, bind, issue, pay, renew, the whole gambit of policy goes live this year in 2025. Claims went live about a year and a half ago. And really what we've been trying to tackle is workflow automation, like really automating a whole bunch of manual steps that adjusters and underwriters have to still do with even some of the most sophisticated systems on the market. We're focused on workflow automation, focused on intelligence, both through like BI systems and artificial intelligence, because we leverage both to driving insights that are native inside the product. They don't have to sign up for 2 or 3 other systems for some of those. So automation's a hallmark, intelligence. These are things that we think, and then cloud native, right? Like they don't have to get servers or storage or worry about that. They get an all-in-one solution for one price. And it's a really remarkable to watch our customers, go from old tech to ours. And kind of the differences in the conversations they have, where they don't have to worry about a whole slew of things they had to be concerned about earlier, and they can take advantage of a modern tech stack and really automate a whole bunch of manual tasks. So that's why we stepped into the space. It's why I think we've had some early success, and it's why we're excited about the future release and what's coming up with policy administration, and why we really like workers' comp. And a lot of people don't do comp well. But we also support, GL and property and auto and a whole bunch of other commercial lines that we support. But we really wanted to make sure that these comp first, SIGs and SIFs and TPAs carriers can have a system that's designed and built for them. It's a massive part of the insurance business.
Yeah, it is. And it's a challenging industry, workers' comp, and it's such important work that you're doing in that space. So thanks for sharing that. And I want to talk about your perspective on the cyber insurance market as well, just kind of overall, because I know that it's experienced some significant changes, in the past few years. So how would you kind of describe the current state as we move into 2025?
Finally settled out a little bit. Like people have started to, they priced, software companies like mine endured some monster price increases in cyber insurance over the last several years. It was massive, and it got way harder to get capacity. So, you're talking to someone who, we live and die on that. Like we have to have a good, cyber. And of course, a firm like ours, you want your E&O and your cyber bundled together, because they're functionally, if you have a cyber event, you had an errors and omission problem too. And so, there's some really good players that have stepped into the gap. One thing I've been really excited about in the cyber market is that the players that have come into cyber are not just coming in and collecting premium and paying claims, but they're getting really involved in loss prevention and control. And so they're stepping in with tool sets they provide for free. They step in with, port scans, and they step in with system identification. They step in with all kinds of services that are helping us stay secure and prevent the loss in the first place. And to be honest, when you go to a small to medium firm like us, because only a couple hundred people, you're not in that big tier. You typically don't get a lot of those bundled loss prevention and control services at a firm like ours. So I think what I'm excited about is first that rates have appear to have stabilized for firms like us and for others, but also that we receive a lot more help with keeping our organization secure. Of course, at the same time, we went through our SOC 2 Type 1 and now Type 2. We're SOC 2 Type 2, which was an arduous process that really helped us become more secure as well. Of course, our carrier was very happy we completed those things, and you can imagine, and so were our clients. So you've seen the whole market, when you work in insurance, require a lot higher limits for cyber. They require a lot more coverage. They also require a lot more certifications like SOC 2 Type 2. It's pretty much a required right to play to even be in the industry now, is to have that. And it takes a couple of years and a lot of work and a lot of money to get there. So I think the cyber market, in that regard, but the challenge is that there's never been, I don't think, and again, you're talking to a guy who's in I've been involved in software dev and the internet since 1992. The internet wasn't even around at the time. I got involved in software dev before we had the web. And then I was fortunate to go to a high school that had a high-speed internet connection in 1993. And so we were able to jump in and build Gopher sites, which was the predecessor to the web. There was a predecessor to the web called Gopher. And then we built, I got to build the first HTML 1.0. And back then, hacking was kind of a recreational activity for nerds that were bored. And what freaks me out now, of course, is that it's an extremely organized, government-sponsored, multi-billion to trillion-dollar industry to break into individuals' data and to break into companies' data. And so you got very, very well-developed organizations that are conducting very sophisticated attacks. And what concerns me a lot is kind of two things looking forward on cyber. Definitely AI, because it has made it way easier. You used to be able to sniff out phishing attempts because the grammar, the spelling was off, or the formatting of the page was off. Now AI will it's fixed all of that for the organizations that are pursuing these attacks. So you have a much harder to detect for the average person when they're being phished. And then, or socially engineered. It's way easier to socially engineer because you can synthesize voice on phone calls now. Like you can literally call someone and it sounds like somebody else. I mean, that is really scary. So you have to do a ton more training with your people to do callbacks and to call a known number and then verify that it was actually the person. I mean, it's scary how good. And then the second thing I'm really worried about is quantum computing stands to potentially break all of our encryption codes. Which, when you have a computer that can hash that many potential options at once, I mean, it's very, 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 very scary to look at something that you thought was unbreakable, and in the next few years, it probably won't be. And so we're going to have to dramatically increase the, let's just call it the grade of our encryption. And so I don't know if that means, and I'm not an expert on quantum computing, but I don't know if that means that we end up with quantum encryption, where you've got to encrypt and decrypt it with these gigantic, length keys. I'm not sure. Again, that's not my forte, but those are the two things that I'm super concerned about with cyber, is that it's going to continue to drive some big losses. We've seen some pretty scary breaches.
Yeah, we definitely have. And, things are evolving so quickly. It's hard to get a handle on, the next thing and what the next challenge actually is. And I know that, as you mentioned, you've had this incredible journey. You kind of started your career at the very beginning, even before, the internet was really a thing. And I'm curious how at each stage of your career, with tech evolving so rapidly, how have you made sure that you and your companies have remained at the forefront of innovation? Because you've done that really well.
We've tried to do it. It's hard. I mean, one of the things we did internally is we built JBKU. I came back one day a few years ago and I said, we need our own university internally. Like we have to take teaching that seriously. And so we built JBKU. We gave it its own building. We hired a dean to run it.
Oh, wow.
We hired dedicated teachers. So we have full-time instructors, a full-time dean, facility just for continuing education in our company. So when you step into our business now, we use a learning management system as well. So we use canned content. We generate our own content. We have our own dean of our school. We have our own instructors, whether it's language instruction, communication skills, project management, leadership, or it's into technical topics that they have. And then certifications, of course, are really important for being able to work on other systems. All of those are things that we cover in JBKU. And so that's been the last several years that we've been running that. Before that, I mean, we always took it seriously, and certainly, like we send people to conferences. We send, but it's hard when you have hundreds of people, and the budget to do that can be really challenging. But of course, we encourage all of our people to spend time reading and learning, but you have to formalize that. Like you can't just say read more. That doesn't work. I mean, you can't just say get training, and so. That's why you have to have like an LMS, and then you have to sign courses to people. They need to verify they complete it. And then you have to have in-person courses and full-time instructors and people that monitor it. It's got to be a thing. Like if you want to take something seriously in your company, you have to have like dedicated people in dedicated seats, make it their job to make sure that this becomes a priority in the business. And that's what we did. So that was like really, really encouraging. The other thing, my business partner, Sebastian, who's my chief operating officer, awesome guy, consumes books like 2 a month, 3 a month, business books. And he runs our book club. And so once a month, he leads an internal book club for all of our people. Anybody in the company can attend, and they read and discuss the books together. And so you on top of the LMS, and then on top of JBKU, and on top of the conferences and the podcasts, we also do a book club. And so, we're trying to get them any way we can possibly get them to engage in continuing education and learning. It is very hard to get mind share to do that. But it also requires that you lead from the top. So Sebastian and I listen or read, Audible or Kindle. We listen or read the books, and then we talk about them. We share them with each other, and then we share them with the enterprise. And so I think it's really important. The top 2 or 3 people, they've got to be super dedicated to it, and they have to do it themselves. If they won't participate in book reading and book clubs and continuing learning, then your organization doesn't have a chance. And I've definitely seen that where they'll push it down to the lower ranks, but they won't do it themselves at the top, and that's not acceptable. So I think that's a really, really important thing. I attend conferences. I go to technology conferences. I listen to tech podcasts, of course, because I'm a 10-year podcaster. I listen to other people's podcasts, then it's really challenging. It's challenging to keep up. So you got to try.
It is, yeah. And that continued education is so important. And JBK University, what an incredible resource for your company. I read as well, but I've had friends who have asked me to be a part of a book club. And I'm always like, I don't have time for that. But you and Sebastian are so busy and you make time for a book club. So now that's making me think I need to learn some time management from you.
Well, whenever you say you don't have time or you say you're busy, just ask yourself this. When my business partner did this to me, he did these little mind grenades with me because he knows me. We've been friends since we were 14. So, been around a long time. We've been friends now for 31 years. So it's he knows me pretty well. And one time I was, man, I'm so busy. He looks at me, he goes, doing what? And then I had to, and he's the only guy who can ask me that. And I looked at him and I looked at my calendar and I went, bunch of bull. I didn't say, there was another word. I had a bunch of BS. Really, if you really look at your calendar, you really go back, if you don't time block, if you don't really manage your calendar, if you don't really manage your time, and if you're not really honest with yourself, like how many hours did you spend on Reels, scrolling through Reels? How many hours did you spend on social media? Have you deleted social media from your phone, which I had to do? I had to delete it off my phone. I only have it on my iPad and it stays by my bed because then I'm not doing that through the day. So there's things that you got to be honest with yourself about, like really how much time are you blowing? If you want to have hobbies, one of the big things that has to go is TV time, and how much time, and then people will say, well, I don't watch TV. I said, okay, how much streaming video do you watch? Because they'll say, well, it's not TV time, but I'm watching streaming content on my device. Okay. Well, it's the same thing. So I think that's where you have to be really honest with yourself about how much time you're wasting.
Yeah. And this is so true. You can always find the time. And we spend so much time, now with technology being so accessible, just scrolling on our phones, and we don't even realize how much time is going by. So I think that's such important advice.
But put screen time on your phone. Have it tell you how many hours. It will be
stresses me out.
Screen times on my phone, but just put it on your phone. It'll freak you out with how much time you spend on stuff.
Yep. Uh-huh. Yes, I turned it off. I need to turn it back on. Hold myself accountable.
You don't have to put limits on. Just tell it to report to you every day, and then you look at it and go, "Oh my gosh, I spent how much time on that? Yeah, you blew that much of your time. This is such a short life. God has given us this beautiful opportunity to come in and live a life and do something that matters. And, and we waste so much. It's not a waste. We spend a third of it sleeping. Mine's more like a fourth because I only get 5 or 6 hours a night, but no matter how hard I try, that's all I can sleep. So, but you spend a third of it sleeping, and then you spend another, eighth of it eating, and you have all these things that chew into it. And you're like, oh my gosh, you have so little time to go and build a business and build product and be innovative. And what can you cut that doesn't really matter?
Yeah, exactly. There's so many things that you have to do daily. Don't voluntarily eat into that time as well. That's great advice.
Yeah.
And this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. My last question, I know you mentioned some upcoming things for Terra and some of your other companies. What upcoming projects or initiatives are you excited about in the new year? And, anything else you want our listeners to know? Yeah.
So, in JBK, insurance organizations of all types, health, life and disability, workers' comp, property, auto, they hire us to come in and either augment their teams or build a product as a team or take over managed maintenance or do data services. And so we have some really exciting projects. Unfortunately, I can't talk about a lot of them because they're confidential to our clients, but we have some really exciting projects kicking off right now for our customers. We've definitely gotten a lot more involved in mobility and two-way texting, in AI adoption, and bringing some really cool tools to our clients. So from the JBK side, I'm really excited about that because we've got some exciting initiatives kicking off with our customers, and with some exciting migrations and go lives. So I'm really excited about that because we're helping some pretty large organizations and some, let's say, high growth smaller organizations. A couple of our clients went from literally two of my clients went from 100 million in premium to over $1 billion in the last year and a half. And we've been right alongside them for the ride, building technology to support that. And it's really fun. I mean, it's really exciting. On Terra, our big thing that we're excited about is we're going live with policy. That's, policy administration, underwriting, billing. So that's to, quote, buying, pay, issue, renew, on work comp and general liability is our first two lines we're rolling out. So I'm really excited about that. We have a configurable system, a highly configurable system. And we think that our cloud native approach and our integrated intelligence and our workflow automation suite, we think it's going to be really big for delivering actually affordable policy administration, which is really exciting. So those are probably the two biggest things. I've got some really exciting speaking events coming up. I managed to speak at about 15 conferences last year in insurance, and I'm really excited about some of the bookings that gotten recently. So I'm fired up to go and hang out with a bunch of my insurance friends at some of these large national conferences, and so really excited about that. And the podcast and all kinds of things that are going on are still rocking and rolling. So I'd say 2025 looks to be an exciting year from a business perspective. That the economy appears to be reasonably healthy. Interest rates are stabilizing, and you've got come down a little bit, and you got some more economic activity. And we're not going to talk about politics or anything, but it's really I just look at the economy, right? And the insurance economy appears to be doing better as well. So I'm excited to see better loss ratios for our customers and our prospects as well, on the ones that we can see all that information on. So I'm really optimistic and hopeful for all those reasons.
Yeah, that's great. Well, you have a lot of exciting things coming up, and you have your book, Be Your Own VC, your podcast, the InsurTech Geek podcast. Anywhere else that listeners who are interested in some of these topics can reach out to you, or where they can contact you?
Yeah, so I'm most active on LinkedIn. If you hit me up on LinkedIn, you'll see once you friend and follow me, you're gonna see a good bit of content. So like shooting video. So you'll definitely see that on LinkedIn. Of course, I'm active on X, on Insta, on other social platforms you can reach out to, but by far most active on LinkedIn. You'll see me there. You can also see me on my website, jamesbenham.com, is where you'll see my speaking events and book and any kind of book events, and anything related to that is all on jamesbenham.com. And then the websites for the company is jbknowledge.com and Terra, Terra.insure, INSURE, is where you can find out information on the companies, on me personally, and then on social. And then, of course, if you hit me up, I'll online, I'll give you all my cell phone and email. I'm super accessible. I don't mind people texting me and calling me and asking for advice, or want to just geek out and talk about tech.
Oh, that's great. Well, you heard it here, listeners. So connect with James if you're interested in any of these topics. And thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. This was a great conversation.
Thanks, Elizabeth, for having me on. I really appreciate it.
The InsurTech Summit 2025, presented by Carrier Management. Join us on May 20th as we unlock the future of insurance innovation. Join industry leaders as we explore overcoming legacy systems, integrating artificial intelligence, legal pitfalls, and insurer-insurtech collaboration. Hosted by Elizabeth Blossfield, Deputy Editor of Carrier Management, Andrea Wells, Vice President of Content at Insurance Journal, and Alan Lehman, Content Editor of Carrier Management. Plus, don't miss our virtual trivia competition with prizes totaling $2,199. To get your free ticket and to view the entire list of speakers and sessions, visit theinsurtechsummit.com.